How many times has somebody said yes and then not bought your service? Yes, 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 yes. I like this. Yes. Do you like this? Yes, yes. And then they find out they bought a competitor. Or maybe they didn't buy anything.
Phil, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here. It's an honor, actually.
And you have been in sales coaching for how long now? 40 years?
So, yeah, I've been in the field of sales for over 45 years now. And I just look good for my age, right? And it being in the field, um, I've touched all parts of selling. And when I retired from the corporate world and I started the business, I focused on coaching as opposed to sales training. So, and I could explain more what that means, the difference if you'd like.
Oh, look, definitely. What is the difference between the coaching and the training?
I'm happy to share that with you. So, the difference is first, I want to say that sales training is very important. And there are many, many great sales trainers in the United States and across the world. And there's many great sales training programs. I encourage everybody to take one, two, or whatever you need. The difference is, as a coach, I work with businesses and individuals with where they are now in the moment because they need to make these sales. And it's kind of, it sounds like egotistical, but it's not. It's really become, it's my superpower. And I think it comes from 4 decades of always having to hit the numbers every month and managing salespeople for 30 of those 40 plus years in sales teams, and having to do that while hitting the longer term goals and building for year after year sales success so the companies could hit their numbers and our customers and our clients could have what they need for them to achieve their goals. So as a coach, it's the reason that I don't have a curriculum. Doesn't mean I don't have a plan, but I don't have a curriculum because everybody is different. Even though there may be commonalities and similarities, their end result and goal is always unique to them. So helping them with right where they are right now, they get results. I like using the word immediately. Now I know that's a relative term, but one just recently had immediate results from a lost sale to a recovered sale that was 3 times the size of the original quote within 2 hours of when I spoke with him. And he is my client. Others may take days, weeks, months, depending on what it is and the complexity. But as a coach, that's what's really powerful. And that's what differentiates how I do this than from others who do this. So I always tell everybody that training comes along with the coaching. But when you're a trainer, there's very little coaching that goes on because you have to stay on your path from how you meet people, get introduced, all the way through to closing and hopefully how to retain customers and clients. So that's the difference. And it's pretty substantial.
So that is so good because I'm listening to the difference and I'm looking at even in the last 5 to 7 years, we've had AI that's come and changed the way a lot of people do their work. What are some of the larger or more significant shifts you've seen in sales coaching over time and over your career?
Well, the good news is that the process is the same as it's been since Dale Carnegie and before. It's how it's implemented. And technology certainly has a dramatic impact on that. And one of the greatest impacts is something that I'm sure you've spoken to with others and your podcast here is the effect of COVID. And COVID actually created in a great big way the technologies that we're using today to do these types of meetings, podcasts, and everything else because people were trapped at home and they needed a way to interface. So there's good and there's bad that comes with it. And it's not because there's good players and bad players. It's just how it's used and how it affects sales. So the good thing is, and there's plenty of them, is that it makes visual communications possible when you don't have to travel. I mean, during my decades of traveling for work, which is why I live close to an airport on purpose, is that sometimes I would fly from the East Coast of the United States all the way to the West Coast to California for a half-day meeting, and it's 3 days of travel for that one half-day meeting. Now, we could have that meeting right here without having to travel at all and accomplish what we need to do. And there's many, many other examples, you could just imagine, and most everybody's living with. The downside is, though, that when you're not with people, you don't really build the relationships as well. Others will argue with me. I have measuring points, and I tell people that we all know that in selling, as in other parts of business and life, that relationships are everything, and you build relationships by being with people, and you have this feeling when you're together, but you can't get that same feeling even doing what you and I are doing right now, looking at each other on the video as we record this podcast, because when we're done, we hang up, we're clicked off, and we're back, and we're doing whatever else we're doing next. But when you're in person, there's natural breaks that take place. You're walking down the hallway together. You maybe say, hey, it's about that time. You have a second you want to go grab lunch together. And then you build these relationships, and you're not always just talking about work. And I tell everybody that, the deal isn't always done. In fact, many times it's not done in the meeting room or in the office. It's done as you're shaking hands in the parking lot, as you walk somebody out to their car, or you're walking down the hallway, or you're just bumping each other. And that's where these deals really come together, and then they close because you've built this foundational relationship. So I know that's a relatively long answer to a relatively short question, but technology has made a difference, and AI is making a difference in communications in a very positive way. And like everything else, it's just got to be used right, and you have to be careful. And like with Wikipedia when it came right out, right? Everybody was up in arms. The schools, because Wikipedia, there was no checks and balances to make sure that because anybody could write into Wikipedia. Well, AI is the same thing. You need to check your facts that you're pulling from there to make sure that they're accurate facts before you go presenting them.
So, when you are working with people and coaching them in terms of sales, what about the solopreneur or the entrepreneur who's just, hiring their first, few employees? How important is it to hire a sales team or a salesperson versus other people in your business? Because I tend to think that salespeople have some sort of superpower. It's almost like people that do public speaking. There's a certain confidence that you have, or this certain ability to handle objections that maybe us mere mortals, everyone doesn't have that. So, how do you know if you're someone who has that type of confidence, and how do you help people identify that?
Okay, so I'll take this in parts here, going to your first part with the hiring and the importance of hiring a salesperson relative to everybody else. Every role that's needed in a business is important. And if you want to do an analogy with the human body, all of our organs are important. Some are more important than others. And you could have everything working great, and if you don't have a heart, nothing else is going to matter, right? And you could build, and I see this happen a lot. Many times, the last thing that the businesses are thinking about when they're going into business or setting up their business is selling, believe it or not. And how are they going to sell? And who's going to do the selling? So you could put the greatest team together and have the greatest product and or services and no business. Field of Dreams is a movie and a story. It's not real life. It's not build it and they will come, or say in the movie, build it and he will come. It is about you have to have that plan, and you have to get the right people. And so the first answer is sales is very important, because if you don't have sales, nothing else matters. You're just in business until you're out of money, and then you're out of business. And you can't pay your people or anything, and you can't help the people you built your business to help, because that's why we're all in businesses, to help others. And so I saw an interesting study recently that showed that a bad sales hire costs a company between $60,000 and $1 million. And so part of what I do now, because this came to me, is where I was asked 3 times in 2 weeks. I said, "Oh, I think there might be a business here." Is I help people to hire salespeople better. I help businesses to hire salespeople better, and there's many factors that go with this, Scherrie. Um, It's not just finding the person that meets what you're looking for and would be the right type of salesperson for what you do. It's also, what are you doing to make sure that you're providing the salesperson or the salespeople everything that they need to be successful in your business. The training, the support, the feedback, the listening, the communications is imperative, um, because the salespeople are the ones who are out in the field.
So let's kind of talk about what that looks like. Because if the salespeople, if that's, pretty much how you take care of the business, what are some of the basic things that all industries need to have available to their salespeople in terms of, trying to make sure that you ensure their success as best as possible?
So they first, they need to be very clear with the salespeople what the goal of the company is for the specific times that we're working in. If you're looking to achieve an annual number or a quarterly number, or a monthly, whatever, you have to be crystal clear, and your compensation program for the sales department needs to be in line with your goals and needs to be in line with your capacity to fulfill. I was part of an organization at one time where the sales department had this very large number that they had to hit, and the factory did not have the capacity to build enough products to reach that number. It took the sales department and the people in the sales department about 30 seconds to figure this out. They said, well, we can't even build that much. And so it was a really big thing, and morale tanked. People left because they had no way of achieving their number. It was mathematically impossible. So everything has to be in line. So the first thing is that the company needs to do is make sure that they could fulfill, and they need to trust. Trust works in all directions. And they need to trust their people until there's a reason not to. And you shouldn't be looking for a reason not to. You'll discover one, but don't go looking for and create that environment. And on the other side, that the salespeople need to understand that they could go back to management with everything, because if they don't have this trust, then it's just not going to work. And the organizations that have this bond and this trust between the sales department and the other departments in the company, they flourish because of that relationship. And it's a problem if they don't. And you see it in sports all the time. When there's a problem between the players and the management, it affects the way they play on the field. And it's not any different in business.
So let's kind of go back to the point that I brought up about confidence, because I do believe that, salespeople do have this amazing skill to talk to people and to try to convey how great the product is. This is the greatest widget of all time. How do you help people that are looking to, staff their sales department, find the types of personalities and people with the skills to adequately communicate with people and even handle objections?
Right. So the the best way to do this is to, once again, it goes back to the expectations. First, you have to know what are your expectations. And when you're looking for somebody to match that, culture is really important. So, because that, and then the confidence, but to stay with the confidence part, confidence comes from success. There's fake confidence, which is why some companies hire me to help them find. I'm not a recruiter. I don't do that. I get involved in the interview processing and the creation of the job descriptions and everything else from working with the companies, because you need to flush out that confidence. Because as you stated, or at least alluded to, that salespeople are very good talkers, and they could talk past people who don't know what to listen for. And many times the decision makers who are making the hiring decisions for salespeople, they're not used to this, and they take all of this in, and then they keep people who are not performing for a very long time. I'm working with somebody right now who kept bad salespeople for 18 months because they kept believing it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. So confidence is important, and it, like I said, it comes from when you're talking to people and you're asking them how do they approach their sales process, how do they determine who they're going to call on, what do they do, how do they do this. then you start to understand where there is their confidence um, real, and is it going to match the needs of how your target customers and clients, how they act, how they what they need. Is there going to be a mesh there? So that confidence is important, and it comes more and more from success than anything else. And you will talk about the key to all of this is asking high impact questions. As far as objections, it comes from maturity, a lot of it too, and from listening is really important, and we all hear that in all of our professions. You're in the legal profession also, Scherrie, right? And listening is key, right? And that's how you pick up your clues for the good people and the bad people. And by the way, I wrote that book that talks about this specifically, handling objections, clues for closing the sale, and all that is meaningful. And asking questions is the way through all of this. It's not about talking. I'm talking a lot today because you're asking me the questions. But if we were in a selling environment, I would be asking you all of the questions, and you'd be amazed at how little I will be talking back to you, because I'll be continue to asking you questions to learn more and more about what you're doing. And when it comes time for me to talk, it'll be focused exactly on what you shared with me. And we will have this conversation. If I have the product or service that I believe will help you as we're going through this, I'll be asking you all the time, why will this help you? How will it help you? What will it mean to you? And if you say, hey, Phil, hold on, time out. I don't see that. That is an objection, but it's not a hostile objection. It's an honest objection. And so you say, what is it that you don't see? And then you listen, right? That's a salesperson's job. And that's it. So we could go on for this for the hour itself.
Now, Phil, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Go right ahead.
Okay, let's walk through your objection handling framework. So, there's this widget that you're trying to sell me, and I'm looking at the widget. It's a nice widget, but I tell you it's too expensive. Psychologically, what is really happening, and how should the salesperson respond to something like that?
Right. And I would say, Scherrie, price is important to everybody. And obviously, it's just as important to you. That's why you brought that up. I'm gonna talk to you directly, but I need to know where you're comparing this with. So, Scherrie, as we're going through this, I'm going to stop in like the old TV shows or radio shows. I'm going to turn and look at the camera, the microphone, and tell everybody in the audience what's happening. So, what I just did is I acknowledged the objection, but I didn't say back to you, "Oh, I hear you. It's too expensive," or I didn't come back and just say it's too expensive, because in your head you could be thinking, "Didn't I just say that? You're just aggravating me now." So, I acknowledge the objection by saying price is important to everybody, and I'm going to have to ask. I want to ask you a couple of questions about why it's too expensive or whatever. So I'm just asking you right now, Scherrie, how do you feel with that immediate response to this point?
Well, I think I can get a better price somewhere else.
Yeah. So we're not. I was out of role play there when I said to ask you that question. So, but I was just so here. Let me take it to the next step. So when you say, Scherrie, that the price is high or it's too expensive, um, what are you comparing that to? Could I ask? Are you looking at something else? Have you bought something else from before that was in the same area? Is it over your budget? What part of this makes it too expensive?
I would think that I'd purchased something similar somewhere else and it was out
Oh,
of budget.
okay, okay. And so right there, then now I know what we're talking about. And the way you said that, you weren't really sure, right? So if you had your lawyer hat on, you'd be saying, "Well, that didn't sound like it was a confident answer," right? So, right, you was because you say, "Well, I think," and everything else, and it's like, so what you want to do. I'm off for role play. So what you want to do is you have to determine: is this a real objection or is this a red herring, something that's a distraction? And you're doing this, and this comes from developing skills, and it's not something you just walk in and get, um, but you want to be answering or responding to the correct objection, and you need to know, is it really an objection? Because you're going to come back and, when you talk about the price objection, and I'll kind of go back into role play here for a second. So, Scherrie, when we talk about price and things are too expensive, that really says when you translate that you don't see the value, because the value needs to at least meet, if not exceed, the price that you're paying for it. Correct? And if you're comparing it to something else, and it's okay, not everything is for everybody, but yes, I am in business to do business, and I do want to do business with you only if we have the best solution for you. And that's going to be the value. So, with that said, could you please remind me, how will you use this product, this widget, and what will it help you accomplish that you haven't been able to accomplish to this point?
Well, this is something I could use every single day to cut down on the amount of time it takes me to do this particular task that I perform each morning.
Okay. And so you have obviously looked at other things, right? With the other things, what did you like the best about what you saw in the other things that you looked at, and why?
I think I like the ease of use and the time. It didn't take me as long to learn how to use this widget.
Okay, so learning curve is important. Your time is important. Your time is valuable, right? So I'm out of role play for a second here for everybody, and because it's good to stop and share, because you were asking me, Scherrie, about the process right here. So what we've done, did I get argumentative with you? That's a yes or no question. Close it. No, I didn't. No, right? Have I argued with you at all?
No,
Have I sounded defensive?
no, not at all.
No. And how do you feel at this point?
More assured.
Okay, so we're building this because doing business with anybody is the three that I know you've heard of many times, which is you have to trust, like, know, trust, and like, right?
Yes.
All equal, no order there. And so what we're doing, and I'm really very sincerely now trying to find out. I didn't jump in and say, "What if I gave you a 10% discount? How will you feel?" I didn't jump in and say that. Why would I give away margin that I don't have to give away margin? And it may not make any difference because maybe price was never the issue at all. I had a client drove me crazy in another business when I was still in the corporate world, that he was a reseller for me. And every time he would introduce himself and say, "Hi, my name's Bob, and here's my price, but I'll give you 10% off." Literally, that's how he started. It was like, and I go crazy. And you know what that does? It opens up the negotiation and beforehand. And why would you do that for any reason? And you're not helping the client. You want to make sure that what you want, Scherrie, from your widget is going to really do this. So time is important. Now, Scherrie, back into role play. I hear what you're saying with the time is important and everything else. And you've looked at some other solutions, and you could have gone ahead and purchased any one of them and never been talking to me, or we haven't been talking to each other, right? But you didn't. So there's obviously something that you're still looking for in that you didn't see before. May I ask what that is? What would that be?
I want to make sure that I was getting the best deal.
Okay. So what about in performance of the widget? What what additionally are you looking for to really take that so you save the most time and you accomplish exactly what you shared with me earlier during when I was asking all those questions about how you're going to use it and why we're talking in the first place?
Well, the widget looks great, but I think the last piece of it was a warranty.
Oh, so that's an interesting question. So, do you have history with warranties?
Well, this is going to be my first time purchasing a widget like this, and I want to use it for a very specific purpose. So, just in case I get it and it's not what I think it is, I want to be able to return it or trade it in for something that does meet my, suit my purpose.
Okay. So let me ask you a question. If everything is there, it meets what you want to do, it's a price that you've become comfortable with, and the warranty is there, would you how many of the widgets would you look to get today? Would you be looking to get 3 today, or would you look to be getting in the case of 20?
I think the case of 20 would be the best deal.
Okay. So we're going to stop out of role play. Bing. So if if we were doing the old show, we would freeze you, right? um, so what just happened? Did I ask you for the order? The answer is no. What I did was I used a trial close, Madam Lawyer. I used a trial close, and the ironically in the book that I wrote with it, I opened it up with a scene with a judge and a lawyer, but the on trial closes. But so what I did is I asked you, what would you do? Now you answered that question. I gave you an alternative and you answered it, and you answered it in a big way because you took the case. And if it was an if situation, I wasn't asking you for the order. So that's a buying signal. So I know that you're on board, no matter how much you may be trying to hold back a little bit. I know that you're on board. You could have come and said, "Whoa, Phil, I'm not ready to make that decision." And that would have told me that there's more that needs to get done. You are not ready to be closed. But now it is. So now we get to the point when we go back into role play, and I'll say, Scherrie, well, that's fantastic. Um, Glad to hear that. How could I make you comfortable that the warranty and everything else will give you the confidence? Because I'm confident I would never let you take something that we're going to take back. Where's the benefit in that, right? So how could I make you feel comfortable that you are protected in the way that you're looking to be protected?
I think if you can point me to the reviews, and once I look at those and see how other customers have, responded to their purchase, I think I'd be very comfortable at that point with your warranty.
All right, very good. And when you see that and you're comfortable, when would you want to take the first delivery? Would you want it, by the end of this week, or is the end of next week better?
Well, as soon as possible. My main objective is to cut down on the time it takes me to perform this task. And if, your reviews are good, I think this widget can help me do that.
All right. So we are through now, Scherrie, the objection handling. I have asked you two trial closes. You answer them both positively. You're feeling comfortable like this. And now I would have to go and I would have to show you those reviews and do these things and ask you when you're looking at them. Now, by the way, have I told you anything about now we skipped the entire first part of the selling process, right? But have I sit and give talked to you about any of the features? Have I talked to you about anything? I haven't talked to you about a thing, but you are ready to buy because I'm focused on what you is important to you. Because if you before we got to this point, if you didn't feel comfortable that the widget was going to work and accomplish what you wanted it to do, at least accomplish it, not exceed it, then we wouldn't be having this conversation at this point anyways. But now we are here. So I could do what so many others do and just keep on talking, talking, talking till you talk yourself right out of a sale. It's called turning a sale into a lead. Um, or we could stop because you are ready to move. You said you'd like a case and you'd like it as soon as possible. So now I'm going to go and we're going to go and I'm going to take you through exactly what it is to make you feel comfortable that the warranty and the customer reviews and everything are there. And and I'll be asking you all along the way, how do you feel? What do you like about what you say? What do you like about this? And at the end, which happens to me more than not, is people ask me, when do we get started? And you're going to be saying, well, how fast could I get my delivery? And it may not even be fast enough for you because you're all bought in. So let me ask you, Scherrie, what did you like about the process?
I like how you really almost made it my idea. And you didn't so much convince me as you pointed out, the different strengths that with the product based on what I was looking for. Like, oh, you're looking for this, this is available. Additional information, we have that. And you even did it all without offering me a discount or trying to come in and close me with other incentives, just by basically listening to what I said and then not being pushy. I've been on sales calls where people are super pushy and it's such a turnoff and even rude sometimes.
Right. And what's very interesting is I didn't tell you anything. I asked you questions all the way through. And this is the key. And I share. So when you go to a magic show, and anybody who's listening, when you go to a magic show and you see the trick, right, you're amazed. Now, do you want to know how the trick was done? Really? And why not?
No, because that takes away, the magic.
Right, because then it's no longer entertaining. You know how it's being done, right? So in what I do, there's no magic and there's no trick. I share this with everybody. There's not a trick because with a trick, you can't trust. And what do we say? You have to trust is one of the big three if you're going to do business with somebody. If you're being tricked and you feel like you're being tricked, then you don't have trust. And the only time you're going to buy is if you feel, up against the wall and you don't have any other choice, or it's the only product available, or I got to have this in the next 2 minutes. I don't have the chance to go anywhere else. I'm going to have to take a risk, right? It's not the way to build long-term relationships, to get positive referrals and all these other things. So it's about asking high impact questions, not just open-ended questions. When you talk with other trainers and other people, it's they a lot of and you go to a training class and talk about open-ended versus closed-ended questions. Closed-ended is a yes or a no, right? And if I could say to you, if I ask you, do you like the shirt I'm wearing, Scherrie? And you say no. And if I ask you again, do you like the shirt? And you say yes. In either case, I don't know anything because I don't know what you like about the shirt and why you like it or why you didn't like it or whatever else. So a yes or a no, there are times when it's appropriate for sure. But if you're looking to learn things, if somebody could say, how many times has somebody said yes and then not bought your service? Yes, 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 yes. I like this. Yes. Do you like this? Yes, yes. And I'm kind of speaking to everybody when I say that. And you go run into your sales manager and you're forecasting, oh, yeah, they told me yes, 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 yes. And then they find out they bought a competitor. Or maybe they didn't buy anything because they didn't have the budget for it. Or in a terrible situation, which I had, it's hard to believe it's been a year now, where there was a very important sale the salesperson and he had to make, and he's been talking for months, telling all of us that that this was a done deal. They loved it. Talked to the board of directors; they're all on board. And when he went to ask for the order in the first week of July, they said, we love it. We're going to actually get this many, and we're gonna give you the order next year because he never and nobody asked him in his own company. He never asked, what is your fiscal year? Do you have money in the budget for this and everything else? So he did everything to get them convinced that he had a good solution for them. And they're right. In this case, it was a product. And they're all on board, but they can't buy it. And now there's ways to work with that too, but why would you put yourself in that situation? He could have gone and said, how much money do you have left at the end of your budget coming up? And I'll make sure that you have our product to match whatever you have left and figure that all out, right? And get at the order because that order is virtually lost. Nobody's coming back around a year later and saying, oh, good, now we can finally get this. That, other salespeople from other competitors are there.
And so, and that's such an interesting point because I know that you've trained teams in B2B sales and work with Fortune 100 companies, but for small business owners, how would you approach B2B sales differently than you would approach large corporations? Because it seems like those are the different types of questions. But with your coaching, how do you advise your clients?
So it's a wonderful question. Um, it's really getting in the door part is where the difference is, and the amount of effort, and also how much you could, how much I could give relative to a corporation who does what I do. In my days, Arthur Anderson was a big company that would come out and train and all this other stuff. And now there's Sandler Sales, which is a fantastic company, been around for a long time. They're huge. They're international. They have tons of resources. So if you're talking, and I'm a good example to answer that question from my own side, being a small business myself, is that, and for working for Sony for 23 years, where I started there as a salesperson and I was vice president of sales for them for a long time, in the latter years of my time there, is that, when I was at the end, it was a $60 billion company later on, after I retired from Sony and went on to work for somebody else that was a $200 million company, it felt like a small business compared to that. And but the answer to your question is, it's about understanding the needs of what that business wants. So, with why would Procter and Gamble hire me when they're this giant machine, one of the most successful businesses of all times, and have all these other things? Because their department, one of their departments, could be struggling on the sales side, and that's where I come in. If they need to have all these leave behind materials and all this other stuff, that I don't have that kind of stuff is available, and I can point people to things like that. But what it is because as a coach, I help them to be successful now. I will go in, I will work with them. I will learn what their objectives are, what's working, what's not working, and what it is. For example, I was recently working with a company, and the president hired me because one of their sales departments was underperforming. They had multiple sales departments. One of their sales departments was underperforming, and the president of the company was blaming it on the salespeople, that we have terrible salespeople, Phil. And I worked with them at 7 o'clock every Thursday morning, 7 o'clock a.m., 7 o'clock every Thursday morning. And I learned that, yeah, their salespeople needed some help for sure, but that wasn't their issue. The issue was the general manager that was in charge of that department, and that was the issue. And the company knew that was the issue. They just didn't want to acknowledge it before I was even hired. And by the way, I was referred in by a business coach that was the company's business coach that also does some selling. But a business coach is like a general practitioner doctor, right? So at some point, the general practitioner goes, "You need to go see a specialist. You need to go see an internal medicine specialist, a heart specialist, whatever it is, skin doctor. You need to go see that specialist." And that's what they brought. That's why business coaches bring me in. And so they said, "Phil, I got a recommendation, got in," and we did that. Realized it was a general manager. I went back to the president. I said, "Here's the issue." And I said, "Will you please allow me to work in addition with the salespeople, but extra with the general manager? And here's what your investment will be now." And so he said, "Fine, go do that." And then I realized that he's a very nice person, everything else, but he's not going to get it done. And I went back and I told the president with the general manager in the room, and I said, "He's not going to get it done. Here's the reasons why." And it wasn't a pleasant meeting, but I had the general manager there because I didn't want anybody to think that he had a chance to defend himself and everything else like that. And I told him what we were going to be doing before we did it because I was confident and I wasn't being mean. But that's where the issue was. They had the wrong manager. So unfortunately for him, they let him go. But you know what? I don't know where he is right now, but usually people that get let go for those reasons do much better where they end up because it's a better match for everybody. That's most of the history from that. And then they brought in a new manager and everything changed and I was out of work. So I coached myself out of jobs quite a bit.
Well, and that is a great thing. Anytime you can coach yourself out of a job, yes, yeah, it's working for you.
So that's my answer. What did you like about that story?
One, the candor, because you absolutely, positively have to have that communication. And really, it sounds like if the other people in the company had been more candid prior to you being retained, then, they may have saved some time with replacing that general manager. But, sometimes having an outside voice come in and tidy things up helps as well.
Yeah. Right. It's just like at home. If you're a parent, right? You're the dumbest person in the house, and the uncles and the aunts are the smartest, and the neighbors and everybody else. And then when the kids get older and they find out, well, hey, my parents kind of knew what they were talking about. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And Phil, look, it takes me back to I remember when my daughter was 6 years old. So she's in the first grade, and we always referred to her by her middle name. And so she came home one day and she said, "Mom, I don't want you to call me that anymore. I want you to, refer to me by my first name because that's what my teacher said." And I mean, from the entire year, everything I said was wrong. It was like, Miss So and so said this, Mom. So this must be the truth. So, yes, parents are, the least smart in the room, always.
Right. So yeah, and people are people regardless of whether they're at home or they're at work, and but once again, the commonality, Scherrie, which I hope everybody's hearing through this whole thing is the asking of the questions and the listening to them, not just pretending to listen. And by the way, when you're a salesperson, make sure you're taking notes. So we're on a video conference, there's reasons for that. As a lawyer, when you're sitting at your table, if you're a litigation lawyer, right, and you're in a courtroom and stuff, you've done your research before you went in there, right? You're ready to go. You're quality. You got confidence. Why would you take notes? I'm asking you. Why would you take notes?
I still take notes because even though I have confidence about what's going on, you don't control all the dynamics. And so part of me taking notes is to document what actually transpires in that moment.
And then how do you use that information?
I use it to one, improve upon my questions, my technique, my follow up, how we approach the next phase if it's, litigation or a transactional matter, and also for reporting to the client.
And how does that differ for sales? Right? Too many salespeople do not take notes, and you are not going to remember. No matter how important it is to say, you are not going to remember, and you're not going to remember specific. And by the way, yes, it is a shameless plug for my book, Handling Objections: Clues for Closing the Sale. But the reality is, and why I brought this up, it's really important, is clues for closing the sale, because it's what they say that could give you the clue. An objection, if it's an honest objection, they're only objecting because it's important to them. And that one thing alone may be what you win the case on. That one thing alone may be what you get the order on. And if you didn't pick up on that, and if you run from objections and hide from them, you may never learn what you need to accomplish in order to win their business, or maybe even fully understand why you lost it to the competitor because the competitor did this. Taking the notes and then going, and they see you taking notes. We're on a video conference, and I always hold up my pen. And I said, I'm looking down, I'm not playing a game, I'm taking notes so I can remember exactly what you said, what's important. And they say, thank you very much. And they know then that you're respecting them because you're taking notes. If you're sitting there, when I interview salespeople and we're having this interview and I have the first say whether they move on in currently what I do today, whether they get to see the decision maker or not, they have to go through me. And if they're not taking notes, and I say, why aren't you taking notes? And I don't get a good answer. They better have something very powerful that's going to more, to get me to move them forward, because I know the problems down the road. And here's the story that everybody remembers, because it's always about the stories. When my wife was pregnant with my daughter, she's reading that big yellow book, that baby book that, talks about the different stages of pregnancy and what to expect and everything else. And there was one line in there that she read to me out loud. It said, take lots of pictures because you'll never remember. And when my daughter was born, she was tiny. Her head was in my hand. Her feet were at the joint in my elbow. She was tiny. I said to my wife, I said, how would I ever forget this? And you know what? That picture goes away fast. But when you have pictures, oh, then you remember. You really remember. And it's the same thing in selling. It's the same thing in legal work. It's the same thing in everything. Take those notes. So now I'm on my soapbox.
But and let's go back to the you say you met with a sales team at 7 o'clock each morning, because I am all about the different behaviors and habits that really create lasting behavior versus temporary skill improvement. What are some of those things? I know we just talked about taking notes, but what are some of those sales training techniques that really hammer home lasting behavior or habits that are not just temporary, that make, you know, the best salespeople?
Love that question. And the reason is because it allows me to tell you that every part of the process, that anytime you get to move to the next part of the process, or your prospect moves to the next part of the process, that's a win. So you have to have a sales goal for every part of the process. So if you and I are at a business networking event, We're there for a reason, right? Are we there just to socialize with people we know? No. Too many times you see that though, right? So why are you there? You're there to find new prospects. Are you very likely to get somebody to sign on the dotted line at a networking event? Not really. It's only happened to me 3 times in 2.5 years. And 2 of them were in the same meeting where I actually had signed contracts at the networking meeting. So you got to be prepared if the moment's right and they're really in the need. And so why are you there? You're there to get one-on-one meetings with people, right? So you should set yourself a goal. I have a business partner. Her name's Brianna Henley from Achievement Business Coaching. She's a business coach. And we shared this with her, and she's been in business a lot longer than I have as far as being an entrepreneur, if you will. And she said, Phil, I did what you did. I got 7 appointments today because you get I train them on how to get the appointments and then move on. Don't talk yourself right out of an appointment, and don't keep talking to somebody, even if they'll talk to you, because if you're only there for an hour, then you got to see as many people as you can in that hour. So you got the appointment, you accomplished your mission. So you should have a goal. I want to come out of here with 3 appointments. I want to come out of here with 5 appointments. And you focus on that goal and you go through. And if you get your 3 or 5, it doesn't mean go home. Go get 6 or 7, and get those appointments. So now you've got the appointment. So first thing set. How do you train? You asked me the question, training people. This is where it begins. Now, when you're in there, you need to have permission to move forward. So when you get in there, what's your introduction? How are you do? You need to have their positive attention. If we use Dale Carnegie's steps, everybody builds their, whatever it is, they build it off of the Dale Carnegie's 5 steps of the sale. Everybody's got their own little thing, but foundation, which is the attention step, which you got to receive their positive attention. The interest step, which is where you're asking all the questions to learn about what their dominant buying mode is, why it's important to them, everything that you need to ask, but there's never a time when you're not asking questions. But this is the key point. Then you take what you learned and you go into your demonstration or your presentation phase, and you only talk to what you learned and how it will help them. And the worst at this are like financial services and insurance people. So I know some of you are out there listening. Please don't jump all over me. But here's the thing. When you have all these terms and conditions and you have all these features, and people are rolling their eyes because when they're buying car insurance, what are they really looking for? Can I get coverage? And how much is it going to cost me? Right? When you're buying life insurance, there's a lot of different things that go on from one company's life insurance policy to the other. And and I have more clients in this range than any place else because they come find me. But they're doing what they're doing, Scherrie, is they're talking about all these things that you get. But you just ask them all these questions. Was any of that important to them? No. So why are you doing that? They're rolling their eyes, they're falling asleep, and then the next person comes in and they say, "Oh, this is what you want." And why is that important? Great. Let me show you. What do you think? Great. Get started? Yes. Thank God I don't have to do this anymore. They didn't talk about the other 25 things that you get anyways. They only talked about what was there. So that's why these steps. So your win, the first one was you got the positive attention, which allowed you to get to the questioning phase. You successfully made it through there. Win. Now you got to the presentation and demonstration phase. Great. And you're asking trial closes throughout this whole thing, and you're going through. And the next step is you're putting them in the place of where they are today and where they'll be tomorrow. You're making them sick and making them better based on what you learned and based on their reactions to that. And then you could go to the close. But if you've done this really, really well, the close is there to be had by asking that trial close and then them saying, how do we get started? And a great story is with 2 people where I just stopped talking. Believe it or not, I do stop. And, but a podcast without somebody talking would just be noise. So, and they said, what? And I said, what? And she said, what? I said, well, what? What do you want? She goes, I want to know what we need to do to get started. I said, well, why didn't you just ask me that? That was the close. I'm working with a chiropractor. I shared with him everything that you and I are talking about right now. And all the steps, and because it was a complimentary, I offer that complimentary session with everybody so they could see how this works. And I showed the steps all the way through. And he was my client. I never had to ask him to be my client. He signed up. He's still my client to this day. And by the way, he's a great chiropractor. He's helped me with stuff too. So it worked both ways. It was a win-win. And but it was the same thing. I never asked him if he would be my client or if he wanted how many sessions he wanted and all this other stuff. He's on board, and we meet once a month and we talk a couple more times during the month. And there's accountability and everything else that goes with it. So the wins go through. So the process is there and goes all the way back to your original question about technology and how things have changed and everything else like that. Yes, all these things have changed and made it more challenging and some places easier to do things because of technology, but the process is still the same process. And it doesn't matter whether you're selling pens or you're selling nuclear submarines. The process is the process. It's just about the time, the complexity, the partnerships, and all the stuff, but all those same boxes need to be checked. And I know because I've sold all of those kind of things. I put products on nuclear submarines and I've sold office supplies and all these things. So it's all the same.
So, and with the process, say for instance, you don't close in that setting as you're going through, what does effective follow up look like? Because, one thing that I just do not like pushy salespeople. You know, someone who's just trying to maybe push it down your throat and make you purchase something. What does that effective follow up look like if you don't close on the first try?
So I hope everybody's focused on that question because the answer is going to be very helpful. Is that when the word follow up, I forget which of the famous sales people that have been around forever said this, but I really like it. You don't use the word follow up in your communications because everybody uses it. It doesn't mean it's bad or anything else. It's just everybody uses it. It's a cliche-ish kind of thing. If you took good notes, you know what was valuable to them. So I'm still working on one that I haven't been able to close yet. But I know what this person wants to do, and he wants to grow his business from $1.2 million to $3 million. And by the way, he's not going to do it this year because he's not working with me, and he's not going to come close because he needs the help. That's not an ego thing. It can be work with any sales coach or anybody. He's not going to do it without that kind of help, right? And so in a communication, it's not going to talk about following up. It's going to say, where are you on your $3 million goal for this year? That'll be in the subject line. So in the body, it's going to be, if you're not on target, how much further along do you want to go down the road before it gets to be impossible? We should get started. And when do you want to start? Do you want to say, I have time to start next week, or I have time, whatever it is. But you got to be honest about that because you don't want to be lying. And I just wrote a blog on don't teach your salespeople to lie. So you got to be honest with your times, but time is a limited resource, right? And when you is with your law part and all of us in business, time is our most precious asset because we can't make more of it. We could just add more resource, and but time slips away, and then you miss. So in following up, you go back to what you learned about why they're talking to you in the first place and what it is they want to accomplish. And that's how you follow up. You say, how are you doing against that $3 million target? What is it going to take for you to get the help started so you could achieve it in the time frame that you still want to achieve it? Or are you okay with just letting this slip another year? And if you're looking to sell your company, I've got one client right now. His goal is to build enough value in his company that in 10 years, he's very specific. He knows exactly what the valuation needs to be, what he wants to take home, and everything else like that. And I'm working with him right now to reach that 10-year goal. And we're doing it one step at a time. And one is getting the right salespeople in there. So that's the answer to your question on the follow-up. Once again, another long answer, but this is important to say that none of this is just magic. None of it just happens, and not everything happens instantaneously, but it's all on the salesperson to be doing the right things all the way along. And and when you don't follow up, then priorities change for the people that you're doing business with, because your competition isn't somebody who's got another widget that does something similar or the same as what yours does. Your competition is everything in life. Your competition is money is a limited resource, time is a little resource, priorities will change if the economy changes, COVID hits, priorities change. And if you didn't take the opportunity to act on that, and if you're not following up, you can't adjust. I was working on a $2 million program with NASA, and the second shuttle disaster happened right in the middle of that. I was just sharing this story with a client yesterday, 2 days ago, and it was a very technical sale and everything else, but they put everything on freeze for more than 2 years. Everything stopped while they did the investigations and all these other things, and it was everything else. So at the end of this whole time, what the decision makers told me, and I had salespeople working for me and all the engineers. It wasn't a solo action, but they said, and there was other technologies that were adjacent to this. So you still had to meet the technical requirements and be priced right and all that good stuff for government stuff. But they said, Phil, here's what really makes the difference. When we were shut down, you were the only one that was here with us all of the time, still working with us. Things changed. The technology changed too a bit. And you were the only one that stayed with us when we didn't have money. Everybody else disappeared and came back when we got money. You were with us the entire time, and we know that. And that was a difference maker because you're still dealing with people. So following up, you don't follow up, you're just giving it away when you don't have to, because your competitors, you have good competitors out there. There's really good people out there. I always wanted to hire those really good people from the competitors. I'd rather have them on my team than competing against them, right? So
So, and that's a really interesting point because, in this case, that was a positive. But as a salesperson, when you are approaching potential clients, every potential client is not a right fit.
correct.
How do you identify that maybe this is not the type of client that you want to be working with?
Ask the right questions. It's up to you and me to ask the right questions. A good example was I was at a networking event. Somebody says, "What do you do?" And I told my quick story and I said, "What did you like about what I shared?" She said, "To be honest, I like absolutely nothing." And I said, and I laughed, and there was a lot of people around. And she just looked at me and she said, absolutely nothing. And I laughed and I said, I really appreciate your honesty. You just saved us both a whole bunch of time. Have a great rest of the day. And I walked away and I went to talk to somebody else, and everybody was there, walked away with me. But it was, why would I go and push and say, oh, what was it that I said that you didn't like? Everything else. There was not going to be a match. I mean, there was something, it doesn't matter what she didn't like. Why would I go do that when I've got 30 other people sitting behind me to go talk to and sit there and do that? And people will hang on with somebody. By the way, you could have great relationships and be friends with somebody, but if they don't have the money, you just be honest with them. You say, let's stay in contact. And you do, stay and drop a note. How's it going? And I'd love to work with you, but, we've all got numbers we have to meet and you don't have any money. So I'll follow up until you do. Just say, what's going on? How are you doing? How are you achieving this thing? And we'll go on. But I can't sit there and wait because there's other people that, I have an obligation to myself, my company, my family, and not to be wasting your time too. Why do you want to talk to me when I can't help you if you can't pay for my services?
Right. Now, I read somewhere that you said that your competition is not who you think it is. What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is where I was going, where I touched on a moment ago with there's other things that challenge that same dollar. So at the end of the day, when we net it all out, we're talking about dollars, some kind of unit of money that, and there's pull on that money. And you have to find out what their priorities are and where those monies are going to go. And just because it's in a budget for here doesn't mean it's going to stay in that budget, because there's other people that may have control over that budget that's completely out of your side. And I'll give you an example. I have stories for everything. In 45 years, I have stories for everything, and they're all true. And there was one end of when you're working with the government, there's fiscal years. Corporations do too. You have to spend that money or lose it because they won't. If you didn't use it, that means you didn't need it, and you're not going to get it again next year. And I was working on this very large technical thing for the military, and my company could not get the specs together in the time that I needed. I was screaming at them because I couldn't do this myself. I needed all the people. They couldn't get it together, and the military went ahead at the end of the fiscal year, which is the end of September, and they bought filing cabinets. Now, this is a great big technical thing that would help the communications for the military, the war efforts, all the things that they're there to do. And they ended up buying filing cabinets because they had to spend that money. Now, as a taxpayer, you're cringing, right? But it is the reality of life. And the reality of life is I didn't lose the sale to a like product and a like service, and they're now using that to accomplish their mission. I lost it to time and to people who didn't share the same sense of urgency that I did in order to get this done or didn't believe me enough. So I didn't do a good enough job internally selling. That was probably on me because I didn't happen, which means I wasn't successful. So I can't blame it on everybody else. I mean, I'm the common denominator there. So probably I should have done a better job internally. But nevertheless, we lost it to file cabinets because of time. Time was the competition there. And budget priorities, they could shift. So if you're not showing enough value that they are going to say, nobody's taking this budget money from us for this because this is what we need in order to accomplish our mission. And the reason we're doing this, then you've done your sales job, but your competition could be something entirely different. And you're not asking those questions because why would you talk to them about what kind of car they're looking to buy when you're selling office equipment or you're selling legal services, right? But it's the same dollars that are there, one or the other. And so somebody up the line makes the decision for all. And that's what I mean when I say that your competition isn't always who you think it is.
So, Phil, if you had just one piece of, sales advice to share with entrepreneurs, on how to increase sales in their business, just play big faster in sales,
Yeah.
what would that one piece of advice be?
Ask high impact questions and then ask a follow on high impact question and then ask the next high impact question until there's no more answers to be had. All of the time, because by doing that, you will learn what's important to them and why it's important to them. And you will know that, and they will know that what you're offering them is going to help them to get to what that is. And I could ask you, Scherrie, the same question. When you're looking for guests, you could get guests all day long, right? But you're more selective on your guests. So why are you selective on your guests?
Because I'm trying to provide a certain amount of value to the viewers that, come and support the podcast. So I want to make sure that the guests that I have on the podcast have something to offer the people that come and partake and consume it. For the people that come and partake and consume it.
And when they do, how does that help you in your business?
My business grow and give me more resources to expand my reach and be more effective.
And then where do you see yourself with when you're looking at your podcast and everything else is really super successful? How will those things lead to that? What does that look like to you?
More impact and being able to help more people, more time freedom, um, and definitely more family time after the time freedom.
There you go. So when you have all that, it comes back down to having those quality guests, right? And because the quality guests will bring more quality guests to you. So it starts with you choosing the right ones to start that ball rolling. And have I lived up to that for you?
You have, but now you did miss one thing.
Yes. What is that?
Other than asking the right questions, go out and get your book. That is one thing you can do to increase your sales and play big faster.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I was truly focused on you here, as you can't tell. But that's the answer to your question. The answer to the question, you see everybody what happened here, it was really sincere. And my final question should have been, and how did I help you get there? So, and then that would have been the close. Because when you answered how I helped you to draw more guests beyond me, then that's the close. That was like, that would be, okay, I got Phil, he's my guest and everything else. And you did do some of that screening, before when you invited me. But how to get the book? Thank you so much for asking. So the book is called Handling Objections, Clues for Closing the Sale. And it's available on Amazon. That's the easiest way. Just go to Amazon, look up Phil Whitebloom or Handling Objections, and you'll see this book, this blue cover, and you get it in paperback or electronically, however you like to read the books. So thank you for asking.
The book I know is great, but there may be someone who is viewing this on YouTube or someone who's listened to the podcast, and they're like, no, I need Phil. How can our viewers or listeners contact you offline to see if it's a right fit for you guys to work together?
All right. Thank you for that question. And I'm going to give you two places. And the first one is just if you go to my website, which is Been There CS, that's Been There CS. CS stands for Consulting Services. It's all one word, BENTHERECS.com. And there's a contact us page in there. That's one way. And the other way, just send me an email directly. I'm going to give you my personal business email address, which is Phil, PHIL, at BeenThereCS.com. That's all, just simple as that. And we schedule just a 15-minute meeting just to say hello. And it does not take a lot of time. And we'll go from there. But thank you very much.
Phil, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
It was great. It was an honor. As I said, thank you very much. And I listened to your podcast, your other ones, and to be with that group, it is truly an honor. So thank you.
And if anyone who is viewing this or listening to this, if you've gotten value from this episode, please go subscribe on YouTube or follow us anywhere that you get your podcasts to get more great episodes like Phil's. And until next time, play big faster.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Play Big Faster podcast. Want more entrepreneurial content?
I like this.
Make sure to subscribe for future episodes.
Already subscribed.
I just clicked on it.
Don't forget to like and leave a review. Share with a friend that needs this in their life.
I think you need this more than I.
Oh, and make sure to follow Scherrie on IG at Scherrie Speaks. And remember to play big faster.